in general, my work really looks at intimacy in different forms, in the way that it makes and breaks, I suppose. I say that I take my departure point from a lot of dance and music movements that have come from the UK. Movements like Northern Soul or Ska or Two-Tone, which are all these kind of moments that have come from kind of bleak and depressing periods in British politics, but then have like formed these kind of coming together of interracial working classness that I find quite a beautiful utopia in. And I use those moments to kind of, or I try and bring those moments forward to see how they can work in this day and age, like those modes of survival that I found really helpful. Josephine came to me for this show, for sure. It's a story that I'd heard previously, and then being invited, because I've worked in Vienna before, being invited back to do this show, I knew exactly that I wanted to look more into this instance of Josephine coming here in 1929, and the kind of outcry and outrage that she was met with when she came here, also before she even arrived, and then throughout the time that she was here and after. I wanted to look at what that was and why that came about and how it came about, and the different, what I learned through that experience really was the different technologies of surveillance that were used to kind of ridicule Josephine, but also then how she used the same technologies of surveillance in resistance to those moments of like friction. I decided to work from the reviews of her shows in Vienna, and using that as my kind of starting point to then, figure out what I was doing here also. You know, what does it mean for me to be here in this body, in this time, in this place? So whilst Josephine and her experience in Vienna is in each work, it's not the work, you know? It's just been kind of like a helpful mapping to move me through the space. Really, Josephine kind of became synonymous with blackness and jazz and negativity in the reviews, which meant that, and she was the watched, you know, like, and then the reviewers or the watcher becomes synonymous with whiteness, and also the waltz in this context, purity, European purity. So I wanted to put those two things in conversation with each other. So I took like phrases and words that were used against Josephine, and I also took phrases and words used by her to have this kind of conversation where you can't really tell who's saying what, and it kind of undermines everything that the reviews have to say, and it becomes this quite romantic back and forth. I'm really interested in the relationship between the watcher and the watched, and how there's kind of a desire and an obsession, especially a desire and obsession with the other, and then that's how fear kind of grows. But with this work, Climax, I wanted it to come to a head in some kind of way. I call it like a hate fuck. It's like this really kind of like sexy, heated debate between, you know, two people, but ultimately it's my editing, it's my I don't know, it's like I've written a play. I love that work. It's really important to me. I use text a lot in my work, and I use flags a lot, and I normally put text onto flags to have those conversations, because there's two sides to a flag, which I've always really enjoyed, and I think that this just brings that into video form, because there's no wind to move the flags inside. I feel like I found a way to do that, and it creates this dance, and obviously dance is a big part of my practice. And then when we come to the redacted film, I was looking at technologies of surveillance in, obviously, you know, CCTV and, you know, the camera, obviously, but what I was really interested in is the lantern laws. I can't remember what year they were brought in New York, which is where anyone who was kind of black or brown was made to walk round in the dark with a candle and a lantern, so that they could always be visible, hypervisibility. And for this, I wanted to allow myself to come in and out of that visibility. What does that mean? Does that mean that I, have found freedom? I don't know, but obviously the title comes from this idea of taking away. And I think that taking away is really, there's some kind of power in that, I think, to take the image away, to take my own image away. And it kind of allows for this backstage and this resting period. But then also there is like the kind of monotonous like violence of performance and exhaustion that you see as well. So it's like using it to my advantage in the same way that Josephine really did, I think. Apparently Josephine Baker was omnipresent before she came to Vienna because of the advertising, the amount of advertising that was done for the show. And I was really interested in that. What was it advertising? Like, is it advertising her? Is it advertising blackness? Is it advertising this sin? And so I was really interested in that. And then in terms of the images that I decided to use, there's 4 colored images and 4 black and white. I honestly just wanted to see what would happen when you lit up an image. Especially, I think really what they're about is being rendered out of place, but also embracing that and coming together and intimacies whilst you're out of place. So the church bells come from the churches ringing their bells and holding atonement services while Josephine was in Vienna. The churches rang their bells when Josephine literally was like arriving on a train to warn the population of the Black Death or the Black Devil. And I was interested in, the power structures, obviously, in that, but also the kind of like poetry of it. It's kind of like a conceptual performance piece in and of itself, and the church and religion in general comes up a lot in my work. Finding the thing that's bigger than you, it comes up a lot in my work. But for me, I wanted to have that interruption in this space, because actually it becomes something completely different. Because a church rings its bell. The bells are the voice of the church. And in this space, if the voice of the church is present, what does it mean? Is it a calling to prayer? Is the work the prayer? Is this the atonement? It kind of feels like that. It feels like this is how you atone. Come here. This is the church. This is our church. This is our our resistance and our faith. And so it's like the church of Rene and Oscar.